Oh, good morning. It brings me great joy to see that there are siblings, family members watching together, either from the same space or from different spaces. What a beautiful idea that Torah can be a nexus for families coming together. And that brings me directly to this week's Torah portion. Vayeitzei has so much in it. We've spoken a lot about the power of dreams. We've also talked about replenishing your own soul the way that Jacob needed to. He was so tired that rocks felt like a pillow. We talked about the proximity of God in that when Jacob lay down to dream, with the angels going up and down a ladder, God, according to the text, was positioned right next to Jacob, not far away in heaven, but right here where we are, especially when we're tired. Well, in a certain sense, this is a big part of a repair moment for us as we read of a tearing moment, at least in one person's soul in the Parsha. Because not only do we see about the love story between Jacob and Rachel, we often overlook or minimize the part of the story that Leah plays. Because after all, she was the firstborn. And if one of the themes of the book of Breshit, of Genesis, is that they are primogeniture is always overturned, meaning primogeniture is the idea that the firstborn son would inherit all, especially land and birthright. Over and over in the generations of the Torah, especially in Genesis, the younger child, be it Isaac, be it Jacob, be it Joseph, the younger child ends up inheriting. Well, that happens when it comes to the women in this moment too, because Leah is the firstborn, and by all rights, she should be getting married first. But Jacob falls in love with Rachel and arranges with her father to marry her. And in the end, when the wedding happens, their father deceives Jacob, and the women are, at least in the Torah's level of the story, pawns. And Leah is the one who is in the wedding bed, not Rachel. And only in the morning does Jacob realize it. But there is so much to say about this story. One of the things is how unkind to everyone. Obviously, on the surface level, you can say, that's not fair. Jacob arranged to marry Rachel, but we forget about Leah. And we certainly forget about Rachel. And we certainly forget about God, because this is not fair. It's not right. Why is this in our Torah in the first place? So I want to share one specific verse from the Torah and then a little bit of teaching around it. When we first encounter Rachel at the well, and Jacob pushes a very massive stone away from the well, demonstrating similar to what Isaac did at the wells. It's a place of meeting. Jacob falls in love with Rachel. We know that she's very beautiful. We're told that she's beautiful by the text. And Rachel brings Jacob home. And then we hear, I'm going to read two verses in Hebrew. This is chapter 29, verses 16 and 17. Laban shte vanot, shem hagdola Leah, v'shem haktana Rachel. Laban had two daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger one was Rachel. And hearing which one was older and which one was younger is important because of the reasons that we've shared already. There's a dynamic that Leah should benefit from blessing first. Ve'enei Leah rakot, ve'Rachel hayta yefat toar v'yifat mar'eh. Now the translation I have in front of me is the JPS. I'm just going to read it without commentary at first. Leah had weak eyes. Rachel was shapely and beautiful. This is an objectification of the physical features of two human beings who are going to be locked in a war within their family. A model of family dysfunction that we see echoing over and over till these days that you and I share. Siblings competing for love. Siblings comparing themselves to each other. Competing in whatever sphere, athletics, academics, social, romance, competing. And that's not how it's supposed to be. That's often how it is. But I would offer this, and I'll share some backup commentary in a second. I would offer this, it doesn't have to be like that. I've witnessed all around me, and so have you, I'm sure, families where this kind of dynamic is set up not for success, but for inner war and for competitiveness and dislike within a family. Listen again to the words. Lavan had two daughters. The older one was Leah, the younger one was Rachel. Leah had, it says in Hebrew, Ve'enei Leah rakot, and I don't want to keep on saying weak because that's not a good translation. And even if it were an accurate philological, meaning linguistic translation, it's not kind. Leah had soft eyes. Her eyes were soft. And Rachel was shapely and beautiful, but let's focus on Leah's eyes for a second. Her eyes are soft, says the text. Why are her eyes soft? It doesn't explain. I'll give you some Rashi, a commentator from 1040 in France. She thought, by the way, the translation of Rashi instead of soft or weak, says her eyes were tender. She thought she would have to fall to the lot of Esav, because it was a prophecy that one sister would marry Jacob, and one would marry Esav. So she thought she was going to have to marry Esav. So she wept continually because everyone said, Rebecca has two sons, Lavan has two daughters, the elder daughter for the elder son, the younger daughter for the younger son. It's so important. It's so important for us to hear that Leah felt her life was fated. She didn't have choices to make anymore. Her agency was gone because there was a prophecy. But friends, I want to step outside the text for a second and simply say that's not how it is. Not only not how it has to be, but I don't want to be resigned to a fate that feels unfair. I think it's very Jewish to challenge the very idea of fate. The way Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik of blessed memory once did, he said there are two different kinds of covenants. There's a covenant of fate and a covenant of destiny. Goral and Yehud, in a book called Kol Dodi Dofek, a book that he wrote, a short essay that he delivered, a powerful spiritual call for Zionism in a world of orthodoxy that didn't yet feel that way. Soloveitchik talked about two different kinds of covenants. The covenant of fate is, well, there's nothing I can do. This is what's going to happen to me. I'm a Jew, and this is my fate. The covenant of destiny is, yes, the world will remind me that I'm a Jew, even when I forget, but I choose that identity. I choose that future. What if we could use some of this present wisdom, hard-won wisdom, that you and I have, because of all the history we witness, including current history, and we look at the text that tells us that there was an observable difference between Leah and Rachel. And we hear voices of comments about why Leah might have been crying. And we apply some other texts, including a text from Yirmiyahu, the book of Jeremiah, where even God cries. God cries. B'mistarim, in the hidden places. Even God cries. And later in the book of Yirmiyahu, through the prophet, God calls out to Rachel to stop crying. Everybody cries. Everybody hurts. Everybody's carrying something b'mistarim. Everyone's carrying something deep within, often in the hidden recesses of our psyche. Sometimes we don't even know it ourselves. You could tell that Leah knew the second you looked at her eyes. And doesn't that make her beautiful? Don't knowing eyes increase the beauty of a human being? Emmanuel Levinas was a French Jewish philosopher who said that the hardest thing to do and the most important thing to do is to look someone else in the eyes. Because once you open your eyes to someone, they see you. You've revealed yourself. What an incredible thing that is. What an act of bravery to allow yourself to be seen. Because if I allow myself to be seen, that means that my tears are no longer b'mistarim. My tears no longer alienate me from the world that I long to share. They don't make my grief a paralysis. They allow me to move forward by crying. As a phenomenal sacred text says, it's all right to cry. Crying gets the sad out of you. That's from Free to Be You and Me, by the way. So what I'd love to bless us all with, in the name of our matriarch, Leah, is to remember that crying can be healing, and it is beautiful, especially when it allows us to see more clearly, when the tears cleanse our eyes and open our souls. And if we can imagine that everyone's got that inside themselves, in their hidden places, maybe we'll remember to be kind. Yes, sometimes things do happen to us. That is true. Sometimes, using Soloveitchik's language, it can be a covenant of fate. Sometimes things do happen outside of our control. But more often than we typically acknowledge, it can also be a covenant of destiny, which is my crying is a God-given gift. It even brings me closer to a God who also knows how to cry. Maybe deep down, friends, we all have soft eyes, but we harden the shell around us because the world can be complicated. I want to bless us to be a little bit softer, starting with our eyes. So I hope you have a beautiful day, friends. I hope the stuff that's in the mistarim, in those hidden places within you, feels a little bit braver, reaches for the air and for the light. I hope that we can repair whatever relationships need repairing. And I hope that we can be kind when we look at someone else, imagining that they've got stuff too. Everybody's got mistarim. You and me and everybody, even God. Let's go into a good day, friends. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow.